Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KeepAdventure.com, out here for another review, and today talking pistol optics. This little guy right here, which is the Holosun HE509-RD with ACSS Reticle. So big picture, what is it? Honestly, it's kind of all the things I had wanted. So a while ago I ended up reviewing one of the Holosuns made for primary arms with their ACSS Reticle, and I love the reticle. I think it's amazing whether you're new to shooting a dot on a pistol, definitely lends itself, or even if you're experienced, just because of shooting unconventional positions, things along those lines. Really, really beneficial the way that reticle works, which we'll talk about some in a minute. The one thing I did not care for was it wasn't enclosed. So honestly, I'm not sure why anyone is making pistol optics, or any optics for that matter, that aren't enclosed at this point. I don't know why. Personally, I think they should all be enclosed, because at the very least, even if you're carrying concealed every day, you get dust and stuff in there, or if you end up doing things out of doors like I do often in inclement weather, then yeah, you have a huge chance of getting all kinds of different debris down in there, blocking your emitter, whether it's water, snow, mud, whatever it may be, and yeah, kind of a showstopper. So by having an enclosed optic, we largely alleviate that stuff. You might have to wipe that lens if you have snow, mud, anything like that on it, but you can do that rather than try and dig in there and actually clean out an emitter. So this basically marries kind of those two things I was looking for: enclosed emitter and that ACSS Vulcan Reticle. Let's go ahead and talk to the reticle first. So when you look in here, there's a chevron in the middle, I believe 10 MOA chevron. And personally, I like that more than a dot. Having astigmatism, oftentimes dots just kind of turn into a little burst. Chevron, usually pretty clean. And having that chevron, you can actually zero the tip of the chevron, which is a more refined aiming point for me. But the big part with that ACSS Vulcan is there's a massive ring, which when you present out and that chevron's right there centered up, you actually don't see it. But if you're off at all, right now, I see this part of that ring. So if I move it to get rid of that part of the ring, immediately the chevron presents itself. So regardless of where you are, what position, you throw this up and you see any part of the ring, it's immediately giving you like feedback for your brain and your eye that's really easy to work with. It's essentially like scope shadow, except you're not up here on this thing. And what it allows is basically that immediate visual feedback so that you can immediately get center and have your reticle there in the center of this optic, which is huge, especially for new shooters. You ever hand someone like a gun with an RMR, there's this, and you're like, look for your front sight. Still this, look for your oh, there it is, okay, cool. This, you're like, hey, like, and super intuitive, like, oh, cool, there it is. Really handy. And as I mentioned, aside from new shooters, just shooting some weird unconventional position under something definitely lends itself to that as well. And that brings us to the enclosed portion. So aluminum housing over here on the left, you can see the screw basically uses almost like a pick clamp. You can also get this with the MOS base plate. And then right here we have our two buttons to adjust up or down, as well as turn it off. On top, we have a solar cell, always collecting some power. And then over on this side, we have a battery compartment. And then also your right, or windage rather, left, right, and right here, your elevation up, down. And with that, yeah, pretty solid. As far as that battery goes, one thing that's really nice is you don't have to remove the optic to replace the battery. Unlike a Trijicon RMR, in which case now you need to go re-zero it. Not a ton of fun. Battery life from that CR1632, I believe it is, about 20,000 hours, but you also have the solar cell, so you're pulling light. And some kind of cool things just built in. One is shake awake, so if this thing is sitting nightstand, something like that, pick it up, one of the settings, it will immediately turn on. And there's a memory, so whatever setting, as far as brightness setting you had it set to, it'll immediately go to that, which is a good thing. And then in addition to that, well, 12 different brightness settings. Night vision compatible? Yes, kind of those bottom two. Would I like it personally to be even a little bit dimmer than that? Yeah, probably. Just so that if you're shooting passive and it's really dark, it doesn't, well, it's basically not as bright. And in here, I'd mentioned the ACSS Vulcan, obviously, which I really like. You can disable that, in that if you don't like that giant ring, which personally I really like, especially on pistols, but maybe you're gonna actually mount this as a offset on like a carbine or standalone optic, whatever you wanna do, then you can get rid of that giant circle, because if you don't need it, then you don't need it. And then you're just left with the Chevron in the middle, which is pretty cool. You can actually go through and do that as well, depending on what you're looking to do. All of that said, what has been my experience with this new optic? Well, I've shot it pretty much exclusively on this pistol, ended up getting it machined for it. And to that end, if you have, I believe the older one is 509T by Holosun, not the primary arms version, it's actually a little bit smaller footprint, so they do not match up. You're gonna need basically a different mounting plate, or if someone's milling the slide, like I ended up having done with Floyd Customs, they basically are gonna run a different program to cut your slide for it. But once I had this thing mounted, I've been shooting it a bunch. One, just range days, and then I actually took this pistol, went and shot it at Thunder Ranch, which was pretty fun there. Doing a little bit of shoot house runs, some other stuff, kind of run and gun stuff. And then probably the lion's share of my time with this, I was actually shooting this at a Room Nation one-day limited signature pistol, I guess it was. So low vis, basically drawing out and largely shooting a bunch of unconventional positions. And with that, continuing my other strong side journey, shooting left-handed, even though I'm a right-handed and right-eye dominant. And that's definitely for me one of the places where that ACSS Vulcan shines is, yeah, shooting other strong side. So your presentation is definitely not the same as with your dominant hand usually. And then the other piece to that, just shooting unconventional positions, under things, around things, it worked really, really well. In my experience, is there anything maybe I don't care for that much with it? Well, the night vision setting. I will say I would like it to be a tiny bit dimmer for shooting passive, but here's the other part with that. It's not the cleanest glass under night vision. It's not. And that's the thing. I would love for it to be a little bit cleaner, probably kind of asking a lot. But while we're asking a lot and dreaming big, I'd also probably rather not be made in China. But it is, so it's what we're working with. If you're looking for a enclosed emitter pistol optic and that ACSS Vulcan Reticle from Primary Arms, well, this is pretty much the only thing out there. I actually really like it. It does all the things for me right now. I mentioned I would ideally like it to be a little cleaner glass, maybe a little dimmer setting with respect to night vision. Doesn't matter, not with dual tubes. If you're running a single tube, it might matter more. But yeah, this thing's done a good job. I'm looking forward to putting more time in with it, especially as it really shines when we get into like fall and winter, start dealing with more rain and snow. Solid optic though. Price wise, you're looking at, I want to say about 450 bucks. Get them directly through Primary Arms. There'll be a link down below. But last but not least, if you appreciate my content and want to support it, greatly appreciate it. Helps me go out there, create more content for you. One of the ways is Patreon, little as $1 a month, less than a cup of coffee. Get early access to videos, some exclusive stuff, and access to Discord. If you have questions, happy to answer them over there. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.